To close it for us is going to be Mr. James Flynn. He is the Senior Vice President of Global Peace Festival Foundation and President of GPFF USA. Mr. Flynn previously served as President of the American Family Coalition from 2002 to 2009. He has extensive experience in the development and management of educational and service projects in the nonprofit sector and is co-founder of Street Smart, Inc., a nationally recognized nonprofit organization serving at-risk youth in Denver, Colorado. Please welcome James Flynn.
Just 1 second. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's quite a task here for us as we conclude this morning, so rich with incredible input from diverse speakers. My task here, I believe, is to summarize in some important points that for us are quite important in this work, in this coalition work for American Renewal. We have an incredible nation that we live in, an incredibly diverse nation, and one that's actually full of people motivated by strong faith convictions, which is a great, great resource and strength of our nation. And yet we are challenged on how we blend and combine together, how we engage within our communities, how we actually address fundamental problems that we face, and in some ways problems that appear to, in ways, be overwhelming us. And so we're looking for ways in which we understand our common mission, motivated and empowered by our faith convictions, but also understanding and embracing our differences and diversity as we work together. That's our challenge. And so we've had very significant input this morning, and I would like to summarize in a presentation in just a few minutes what we've been working on as we're developing this coalition work and as we invite you to participate with us. We look around our nation, and it's amazing for us to look in areas of family and youth and look in areas of the economy. We all know that we're challenged in many significant ways. It is important to look at social science data. I'm not going to focus on it now, but one thing it shows us is actually definitively and objectively what I think we know by our common sense, that families are important, that it's important to invest in our youth, that values and virtues are important if we're going to have a healthy society and healthy community. Our nation today is struggling in very, very significant ways, and hence we have to ask, what shall we do? Our nation is at a crossroads. Our nation is at a crossroads, and we have to decide which way to proceed. How do we proceed? How do we find solutions that can fundamentally impact our direction? We think that it's important to consider principles and values that have guided us thus far, because the road still is before us. And that can be found for us in distinctive qualities of our experience in this nation. Again, what we've heard from various speakers this morning. The first distinctive quality for America is that we recognize that there is a divine basis for our rights and freedoms, that we stand on the truth that we are created equal and that we're endowed by our Creator with rights. That simple and profound point is fundamental and important to the vision for what America is meant to be. Second, that America's founding is completed when the dream is finally realized. I appreciated this morning that Dr. Durley addressed the issue of American renewal, and is this something that I want to see renewed in America because of the pain and failure and injustice of our history. But I suggest to you and share with you that our motivation in working on this coalition is that America is not defined by its failures and its past, but America is defined by its vision and what God has inspired us to achieve as a people together. You heard Dr. Moon's speech, and perhaps you heard him reference in there something that touched me, talking about the spiritual heritage in America. We're on a course and a path, and all of our people have invested in that path, not about what we accomplished before, but what God has hoped and seen that we do represent and fulfill in this nation. That this nation can be a model and an example of how all God's children can live together, work together, prosper together. That's the hope. The dream is not fulfilled. Next year, we'll celebrate the 50th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech, right? It's such a powerful reality that in 1963, Dr. King stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and referenced the Declaration of Independence and called on America to live up to her founding ideals. The work is still our work. The founding of America continues, and the founders of America are not simply the men who wrote the Constitution and worked on the Declaration. Yes, they had an important role, but the founders are still amongst us here. Amen. Because the work is not yet done. That's what this coalition is about. And so we look across our history and what I believe that we're calling to renew is a commitment to the dream of America. We heard Dr. Durley also speak about material selfishness and greed, right? Is the American dream that I can get wealthy for myself, that I can get rich? Is that the American dream, or was there something much more profound, much more central to who we are as people of God that has inspired people in this nation? That's the dream that I believe that we need to uplift and renew and commit ourselves to. America is about shared principles and values, about self-evident truths. And one thing that we believe is important and why we want to have these kinds of discussions, it's important. Ideas are important. Ideas are important. How we understand ourselves, how we recognize our commonality with each other, how we see others, affects how we live. Ultimately, how we live is the testimony to the quality of our character. We need ideas and we need action. So think about society. How can we have cohesion in a diverse and pluralistic society if all of us have separate and non-intersecting values? Then we are separate parts intersecting and clashing with each other. It's important that we find the glue within society that begins with general agreement, first of all, on transcendent principles. This morning, Dr. Thompson, who, as you heard, served as the chairman of the Parliament of World Religions, said, our religions are all different. They are different. That's true. There's profound differences in how we conceive of and talk about the transcendent God. And yet, when we look down to the kinds of things that Dr. Woodson talked about, the Josephs actually are implementing core truths and values by the way they live, And so we need to consider the transcendent principles that are simple, universal principles. They are amongst us. They're part of our character. We need to highlight them, so we see how we're the same in our diversity. We heard Dr. Thompson talk about the golden rule, right? Simple truth, used in somewhat different language and different traditions, but the essence of it is the same. Transcendent principles are necessary as the starting point for the glue in a diverse society. We then have to discuss and debate and find consensus on how we apply those principles in the way we live. Shared values are essential to cohesion within our societies, because that becomes then the basis of what we consider as standards of right and wrong. And so it's shared values and principles that allow us to have cohesion within society. I consider myself a pretty typical American. I live in a neighborhood that I consider a pretty typical neighborhood outside of Washington, D.C. And just to simply illustrate my point, I'd like to tell you about my neighbors. I'm an Irish American. Across the street from me is a man named Terry O'Brien. He's also an Irish American. He's a lot like me in terms of our cultural and ethnic background. On one side of me, my neighbors are Ray and Maria Escavera. They're from the Philippines, right? Behind me is Carlos and Kathy. Carlos is a Puerto Rican American. On the other side of me are John and Gloria. They're from Nigeria, right? They immigrated to the United States from Nigeria. When I look around me, I see the world. I see the world over my fence, over my yard, next to my yard. That's America to me. And when I talk to my neighbor Ray from the Philippines about our gardens and our simple things of life, there's a bond there that's really simple. It's just really very simple, right? But I consider this. I think about this. If the person living next to me was someone whom I had fear of, that I was afraid that he or she did not respect me, my family, and my property, that perhaps could be a threat to my family and my property and my well-being, what would I do? I wouldn't have, just a tomato fence separating myself and Ray. I'd build a wall, right? And I'd start protecting myself more and more and more, because the more that shared values breaks down, the more I have to protect. I feel that I have to protect myself from the people around me. That's our reality, right? Shared values are breaking down, and the cohesion even within our neighborhoods is breaking down. We need to work on consensus on values as the glue within our society, so that no matter whether John and Gloria are evangelical Christians or Ray and Maria are Roman Catholics, and I'm not sure what Terry across the street is, but that we have simple, basic values that we share as the glue within our society. That becomes the basis for standards of right and wrong. This aspiration for America, e pluribus unum, out of many one, is a beautiful vision. It's about ideas. That's what we're talking about here. America is a vision, an ideal that we strive to realize and fulfill. And it's based on simple principles and values. Ultimately, that's expressed as one nation under God for a very, very important reason. And I'll mention here, the principle of self-government is actually essential to the American model. We see ourselves as the land of the free. Liberty is important to us. And so it's important for us to remember how we are able to secure that liberty. One of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Rush, said this: "The only foundation for a republic is to be laid in religion. Without this, there can be no virtue, and without virtue, there can be no liberty. And liberty is the object and life of all republican governments." Now, I actually spent time thinking about this, and I was very impressed by this. To me, it can be understood in kind of a simple way. What he's talking about here is the intrinsic connection between liberty and virtue and faith. We want to be free people. We want to have liberty. To be truly free. To be truly free. I actually have to be able to govern myself. I have to govern myself. I have to guide my life according to a certain framework. In order to be truly free, I need to have personal virtue and character. And where do I find a framework for that virtue and character? It actually is what we find as contributed by the great faith traditions. Liberty requires virtue, and virtue requires faith. That's why in our system in this nation, throughout its nation, it's people of faith who have called America to live up to its founding ideals, to continue to keep the dream alive, to continue that work because it comes from the wellspring of faith. The Josephs who are succeeding under unbelievable circumstances find power and strength in their faith. That's why we need to honor and respect faith. That's why religious freedom is such an important right within our system and everywhere. John Adams, the father of the Constitution, said, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net." What he's talking about here is governing people is not something that can be done externally. It has to be done within the self. We have to govern ourselves. That's why he goes on to say our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So it is our conviction that, again, what's important for us in America today is to remember these basic points about the importance of principles, about self-evident truths, about the fact that each and every human being is endowed by God with rights and responsibilities, and that we need to build consensus around the application of those principles as shared values. The Coalition for American Renewal seeks to engage and promote this discussion. I believe it would be so healthy and important and valuable for our nation if communities around America would start talking about these kinds of fundamental issues. We heard this morning, got to change the conversation. We got to change the conversation in this way to talk about what's really important first. That's what's going to give us the inspiration and the common cause for us to solve problems in real ways. As you review the information from the Coalition for American Renewal, you'll find that there are in the brochure 7 core or guiding principles, and I'll just put them on here. I won't go through them. I just want to indicate that there's a healthy and dynamic process going on. As Dr. Schuler helped guide some discussions over months as we talked about these things. How can we articulate these core ideas as clearly and concisely as possible? The principles that we can agree on, I'm sure, are simple. The first one here, for example, every human being has intrinsic value. To me, that is a self-evident truth. I am entirely confident to convince and demonstrate to any person on this earth that it is a self-evident truth that every human being has essential value, a truth beyond dispute. Why is that true? It's because we're created by God. We're endowed with value by God. And these kinds of truths are what we need to be a starting point so that we can see beyond the fact that I'm a Catholic and you're an evangelical, you're a Muslim and she's a Buddhist. And we can see these fundamental truths that are the starting point for our shared values. Ultimately, toward one nation under God means that we got to remember the vision and discuss and consider what is the American dream? What does it mean to us individually and collectively? And how can we keep that dream alive? America is about ideas, about truths and principles. How can we discuss and have agreement around those kinds of principles? Because the shared glue that binds us together are values that we hold in common. The work we must continue to do is, first of all, to keep that dream alive and then to work together to make it real. In some ways, we might think it's 50 years since the I Have a Dream speech. And we might think, that's, how far have we come? I would dare say that we've come a long way. Because in the scope of human history, in the realities around the world, the challenges are great. And the patience that we must have should be real. Bring focus on principles, build consensus on values. It's in those ways that I believe we can work together, and as the starting point, using the starting point of those ideas to work together in common cause, that America can become a nation that lives up to its founding ideals. Thank you very much.